when I was younger, I thought well-being meant like, oh, am I fit? And am I being as perfect as I can? And am I doing as much as I can? That was the model.
Mm-hmm.
The questions now are, do I have energy for that? How can I get more energy?
It's okay to not want to be everywhere all the time, because that my tendency is very similar in that I'm driven to be productive. And so when I notice that I'm in that over hyper productivity, that's a marker for me to go, what do I need? It usually means I'm not taking care of myself. Hello, my friend Jen Liddy. How are you today?
Hey, Bridget, I'm good. It's gray and it's snowy here in Syracuse, but I was like, and I'm good.
I love coaches, don't you? And you're good.
I know.
And so, Jen, you and I know each other for lots of reasons. So you have been my coach for years. I have worked for you in your amazing content creation mastermind group. And now you're thinking, oh no, judging by the content she puts out, is that really what I want to send? Joke. So we know each other from that. And then you also attended a retreat of mine recently that was really oriented toward well-being. And so that's what I want to talk about, if you don't mind. I'd love for you to tell people who you are as a coach and as a content creator and a leader. And then I want to talk about your well-being.
Okay.
So knock yourself out.
For my well-being, I kind of stopped thinking of myself as a coach because I realized I'm much more of a collaborator and a consultant. And so I realized what I really do for people is kind of pull things out of their head and help them make kind of order of the chaos that they are often in. You know, I'm a very linear thinker. And my clients think in circles and zigzags and swirls. And so it makes it really hard for them to feel productive. So I realized I don't really coach. That was an identity I kind of had to step into at the end of last year. And that really helped me with my well-being, because I was like, oh, this feels right. So just to let everybody know what I do. So I'm a content creation specialist. I'm a copy and messaging and systems person. So I help people find the words to put to their ideas so they can leverage them and make money in their business, because everybody needs content right now.
I love that you said that. So if I were working with you as a coach, because I do identify as a coach, I think of you as a strategist.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because your superpower is really helping all of us organize all that chaos, is the word you use, but all the stuff in our heads.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that you identified that identity shift is part of your well-being.
It's not quite rolling off my tongue yet, but the stuff on my website says I'm a copy, messaging, and content strategist, but it's a little bit of a mouthful. So it's getting there, but I'm on the way to that.
That is cool. So you made a big shift in your business as a consultant and strategist. So how did that impact your well-being? Let's just dive in.
Yeah. Okay. So to give you a little bit of a background, I decided in 2019, the December 2019, that I wanted to lean into not general business anymore. I really wanted to lean into content and copy and messaging. That's what my superpower is. Mm-hmm. And I was so scared at the time. And I thought, nobody's doing this. No, but now everybody's talking about content because content is everywhere, right? And so I was so scared. And one of the things I really had this vision of was growing a group where I could scale my business and really support people, because they don't only need their ideas pulled out of their head. They really struggle with accountability and the getting it done kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I had created a membership, and I really, really, really wanted that to be my only offer. And so I scaled back everything else. I stopped working with private clients. I stopped working in a mastermind group. I just had my one offer. I had a couple of private clients, but I really wanted it to be scale, that everybody says is. And that was like the mentors I worked with and the people I felt like that was the model, right? Uh-huh. And I sat down and I worked the numbers. How much time am I putting in every month to run my membership? And how much money am I getting out of it? I will say a lot of months, the satisfaction was just enough to keep me going. But when I looked at that, it was just not profitable.
Mm-hmm.
I had to do something. So I gave my members 5 weeks and let them know I was going to be closing it down. I was very transparent about the reasons why, that it was only because of time, capacity, and profitability. I really loved my members. I wanted to keep working with them. So October 31st was the day that I ended and I closed everything. And that was like kind of, I closed the door. And I can describe it only in this way. I was walking around on November 1st feeling like I had wings and I was floating because the churn of content, and I want to say, I painted myself into this corner. I just kept upping the level of, what I would provide to the point where I loved it and I could do it. Right. But then it wasn't profitable and it just was energetically, I guess, depleting me. And I hadn't noticed. That was the thing. I hadn't noticed. So I was wearing this kind of invisible weighted blanket, which on November 1st was removed. And ironic, I don't think it's ironic. After that, everything in my personal life kind of exploded and needed my attention in a way that it never had before. And so now I had the space to do it. And I also had the space to think about like, well, what do I want my business to be? And how do I want to work with people? And since letting go of the membership, I still show up regularly in my content. I'm still doing what I'm doing. And I actually have 2 new clients out of nowhere, 2 new private clients, but it's just been really interesting, like what has come in once I kind of shrugged off that weighted blanket.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love the transparency. And as a recipient of the communication, all I could think about was how brave she is for changing this model to live the life that she wants, to create the life that she wants. And so it was very transparent and authentic, and it landed. Oh, so I love that. And so I saw that as taking a stand for what you were creating. And in this case, it's space for your well-being. And then whatever is happening in the rest of your life, so often we do just pull the cloak on tighter, the weighted blanket
lean
on
more
tighter.
in. Right.
Yeah. And so since you've shed this weighted blanket and you have these wings, how are you making space for you? I mean,
well, I think well-being has shifted for me. What I used to think well-being was, I think when I was younger, I thought well-being meant like, oh, am I fit? And am I being as perfect as I can? And am I doing as much as I can? That was the model. The questions now are, do I have energy for that? How can I get more energy? I don't have a lot of energy these days. And that's like, I think that's my priority, is figuring out how to get more energy. So in terms of making time, it means, things that I don't like to do. Like, I don't like to do tapping every morning, but I know it's good for me. Right. So like carving out time. I don't like to get on the treadmill, but I know that it's good for me. So it's kind of carving out time. And also what I'm really trying to do is not be like perfect about it. So if the tapping I do is like a 4-minute tapping round, then, that's good enough. There's a lot of good enough happening, I think, right now.
I'm so glad you said that. Yeah,
I don't have a choice. It's just, that's the capacity.
So capacity is my word for 2023. For that very reason, to really look at that kind of that question you were asking, do I have the energy for this? Do I even want to do this? And so it sounds like you're making some intentional choices about the types of activities that you're doing for that energy. Like, energy is your marker.
Yeah. Let me give you an example.
Yeah.
Last week, a woman I've known her for years. She reached out to me and she said, I want to work on my marketing. I have XYZ trouble in my content and I'm doing this event and I really need help with it. And it was a lot. And her message needs, she needs a lot of one-to-one time. And I went in and I looked at her stuff and she answered some questions for me. And I was like, I do not have the capacity or the energy to give her what she really needs. And also on the timeline that she wanted it on. And so I was able to reach out to a colleague and say, I think you're a perfect fit to work with this person. And here's why. And I moved her from my calendar to this colleague's calendar. And it was like, again, I felt the wings. And I think that's my physical indication that like, oh, you made the right choice.
Yeah. So the wings as opposed to the weight.
Yeah. Yeah. The weighted blanket versus the wings.
Yeah. Yeah. And so here's my so what else gives you wings? What doesn't feel like weight? So from your like that capacity for you, what else gives you wings?
I'm trying to figure that out a lot. One of the things I've been talking about with my coach specifically is my energy. And I said to her, like, oh, well, I'm 53. Maybe this is just the energy somebody has when they're 53. And she's like, no, that's a lie. That is not the truth. You don't have to live the rest of your life thinking like, oh, well, I can't go on that kind of vacation because I would never have the energy for it. So one of the things, and I'm really, again, trying not to do the perfectionist thing that I do. One of the things is like, all right, I can't do like the most perfect eating nutrition plan in the world, but what about sugar? Could I remove sugar? And so, I've been going sugar free since last week, and I'm starting to see like, oh, I do have more energy and I'm not crashing in the afternoon and I don't need coffee. Like I'm starting to see some shifts. Honestly, it is just how can I baby step to get more energy?
Well, that's exactly what you do with your clients. And isn't it interesting how we can do that for everybody else? And then when we're baby stepping our own well-being, we really have to do that. Oh, am I trying to be, here's the phrase I use. Am I trying to be perfect or present? Because that dials me down to go, oh, I'm just going to show up for 2 minutes of tapping or 2 minutes of walking outside. Yeah.
That's another good one.
Yeah. And so you were at a retreat of mine recently.
Yes.
And I'm curious. So it was a small retreat.
Yeah, I loved it.
And what did you take away? What did you learn?
I learned that it doesn't have to be long to be impactful, like that a retreat doesn't have to be a week to make a shift. So I think, again, that's a good, sometimes you're like, oh, I need a vacation or I need to do an hour of exercise so I loved that it was Friday night, all day Saturday, and then Sunday morning. That was just like the perfect amount for me. And it was enough to shift, I learned, and then we also had time to just kind of center and be grounded. I learned that, it is hard to step out of your real life and go meet people in person again. And also it's incredibly worth it. Because I met some amazing women at that retreat and also had some experiences I never would have had. And I've also never been to Arkansas before. So I got to go to a new state. So there were so many uncomfortable things that I had to do to make it happen. Like you have to buy airfare, you have to, get a hotel, all of these things. Oh, you have to meet new people. Oh, should I just stay home this weekend and not go? Ooh. But it was like, oh, right. Getting out of your comfortable zone it's always good for me. I don't want to do it, but it's always good for me.
Yeah. And I do think it's harder now than it was pre-pandemic. And so the energy and the capacity, I see that with all of my people, myself, my students, everybody is still feeling like it's weird to be in person.
Yeah. It takes extra energy.
It takes extra energy, and travel takes extra energy.
Oh my God. And extra patience.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Something
really,
also I'm short on.
yeah. Well, just leaning into the fact that we've been behind a Zoom camera like we are now for a lot more of our waking hours than we're used to, which does impact our capacity and our energy. Yeah. And so you mentioned the connections. I mean, that was the intent really of the retreat, is to pull people out of their comfort zone, but then also create the connections. Who did you connect with that was interesting to you?
Oh, well, Janan and I have already started talking. Janan is she's a global book publisher, and she came up with this idea of how I could help her clients that I never would have come up with. Like, I'm not the great big visionary idea person, and she clearly is. And so she, before we even left, she had ideas about how to do it. And she's just really, she's an interesting person with a completely different lifestyle from me. And I have so much to learn from her. So I was able to connect with her, and also like everybody. Oh my God, please remind me the name of the woman who did the bowls for us, who did the singing bowls.
Peyton Hanby.
Right. There were just all different types of people there. And it was really small. So you actually got real interaction with people without it feeling like a convention. And then I got to see Jen Sherwood, who is a friend of both of ours. And I hadn't seen her in person since 2019. Yeah. And of course, we had never met in real life. There was so much good stuff. It's so weird.
It's so weird that we had never met in real life. And that's what I love about this kind of connection. And then also how it deepens when you get in a room with people and feel each other's nervous systems and each other's creative energy and just all those things. So it does bring a different level of presence when you're in person with people.
Yeah. The other thing I think it does, and I think that I need to do more of this is, when you're going to an in-person thing and there are people there who are, I'm going to put air quotes around this, ahead of you, right? Like in their business or in their life or whatever, or they do more than you, like they have more capacity or they have harder lives than you. It's very easy to be intimidated by that. Like, how do you get so much done? What do you mean you have 4 children? What do you mean you have 20,000 chickens on your egg farm? Like, what do you mean you also have a family? What are you talking about? How do you do that? Like, I can barely tap for 4 minutes in the morning and you're running a farm with 20,000 chickens. Okay. So I think that it's really easy to get like, oh, I don't want to be I'm going to be intimidated, or what the hell am I bringing to the table? Or like, who am I to be going to this thing? And I do that a lot to myself. In fact, a friend of mine went to a conference with this guy who's big in the coaching world. And it was like this, I think she probably paid $7,000 to go to it. And there were all these big names and it was very done. Right. And I was like, oh my God, I don't think I could have gone to that because, well, first of all, I didn't have capacity for that kind of energy expansion. But like, I really think that I would have been kind of intimidated by some of the people in the room. Like, what am I doing here? But no matter where you go, I mean, your retreat was 9 people, right? Yeah. It was still like, there were still people in the room I could have been intimidated by. I think it's a choice you make to not be intimidated by them.
Yeah, I was going to ask if it's a choice.
So, I mean, there were so many good lessons for me in just getting out of my comfort zone, but also being in the room with some people who are like doing some really incredible things.
Yeah. And that's what I love too, is just the variety of the people in the room and, being willing to learn from them. And so I like those small, intimate retreats because everybody is in that space where they can hear each other.
Yeah.
So I think it's very fun. And then the other thing that I think is cool is when we start to do that lizard brain exercise and everybody's like, oh, we all have those lizard brains that tell us we're not good enough and we're not perfect enough and we're not showing up enough or all the things. I just find that so fascinating. And I think it helps people settle. To
know that. Yeah, it's like the human experience.
Yeah. And so we know that intellectually, but to see it in action is always kind of fun. And then there was that moment where my perfectionist said, I wonder if we're going to burn the deck down since I just lit this thing on fire.
Down. You mean when we were outside? Outside. That was a concern.
Sometimes there should be a little bit more perfectionism, perhaps. Yeah. And so you had this experience and you've connected with some of these women. And I'm really curious now about how do you turn down the volume of that perfectionism in the middle of a Tuesday so you can remember to tap for 4 minutes? What are your strategies?
I think one of my strategies is being open about what's really going on in my life. Just telling people, like I had to cancel a second time on a podcast, a person I was interviewing for my podcast. And I felt so embarrassed by that. And all I said was, the first time it was because a family member was in the hospital. And the second time it was because a different family member was in the hospital. And I was like, my life just isn't normally like this. And, all I could do is be open and apologetic. And so I'm trying to figure out, how to be, what is the word? Kind of transparent without being, without telling stories that aren't mine to tell, or without trying to make people feel bad for me. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. But the other thing, oh my God, I'm really working on this, is kind of just honoring that other people have different energy than me, and I don't have to match their energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I can only work on my own energy. And so apparently energy is my word for 2023. I want my energy back.
Yeah. Yeah. And that may be the word for well-being for you. You know, well-being may not be
Yes.
your word. It may just be, I want the energy capacity that feels like mine. That sounds really settled to me.
I agree. And I don't think that until the last 2 years, I don't even think I believed that energy was a thing. I don't even think I really understood that it can come and go, and that there are different types of energy. And it's only in my later life that I'm starting to understand this is a real thing, even though we can't put our fingers on it. Like, it really is a thing that affects our day-to-day life. And when I think about who I used to be, it was go, 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 and do, and do, and do, and make sure it's perfect. And then beat yourself up about it, and make sure that you spend a lot of time rethinking how you could have done that thing. And I think, like, how did I keep that energy up for so long? Granted, I was younger, but I am really trying to just lean into honoring my energy and understanding, like, I don't have to meet other people's energy. But that is a lot of, that's a lot of inner chatter for me. My inner critic has a lot to say about that.
Yeah. would have a lot of questions if this were a different conversation. And it is not. And I think that's what you do in your work with other people, is help them get out of their inner critic's way so that they can put the content out there.
Yeah.
And so I love the fact that you used that term where you were looking for the right amount of transparency and availability and telling the stories that are yours to tell. I wonder if there's some well-being story that's yours to tell right now.
It's interesting because, you're supposed to write about it from the scar, not the wound. And so I don't know if I have been letting people know. I don't know. I mean, I allude to it sometimes, but, and I really think I'm trying to share the message with people about, first of all, you have to honor your own you-ness, lean more into your you-ness.
Mm-hmm.
Stop trying to be everywhere, especially on your content platforms. Those are the things, like, I say over and over and over again. I can't say them enough. But I think I have really had to live it this year.
Yeah. And that's what I really took away as permission from you, is that it's okay to not want to be everywhere all the time, because that my tendency is very similar in that I'm driven to be productive. And so when I notice that I'm in that over hyper productivity, that's a marker for me to go, what do I need? It usually means I'm not taking care of myself.
I think when you're good at being productive, it's kind of like a badge of honor.
Oh, absolutely.
And I am good at being productive. Mm-hmm. And my husband, thank God for him, because he's been reminding me, we've been married like 350 years, and he has been reminding me the whole time, it's okay to just watch a show. It's okay to not fold the laundry right now. Like, it's okay to scale back in your business. And I really appreciate having that person in my life. I feel like that's a privilege, because not every perfectionist has that. But when you're good at productivity, I think it goes to that thing. You don't have to do all the things you're good at. And so I think that's something I need to put in that box of things I'm good at, but I don't need to always do.
I'm looking at the signs in your behind you, and I'm like, oh, that's a good sign.
Yeah. They're all about just being where you are right now.
Yeah.
Trying to be where you are right now.
It's so funny. So you're teaching a mindfulness and presence
in your content. Right.
Like, well, maybe I should read my own shit.
Don't we always teach what we need to learn?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. And so, I mean, my focus is minding your minutes.
Yeah.
So that I don't spin off into space and do all the things that I could potentially do that are mildly interesting to me, that I'm also pretty good at, because there are those choices, like, and so what's next for you from a capacity perspective? Just what are you building right now?
I have a vision to take I'm not exaggerating when I say I have 40 to 50 trainings, templates, just things that DIYers could use to make their content better. Little bite-sized things. So I have this vision to create a digital product for people, like a digital product store for people who want to DIY it. A lot of my audience is not ready to, hire me to work one-to-one with them. And the second vision I have is more collaborations instead of the biggest aha I took away from closing down my membership was I had this mistaken belief that because I had been a high school teacher and a college professor, my role is to build up a group and hold up a group and have a huge community. And that was part of the original vision. And the funny thing was every time my membership got to 33 people or 35 people, two people came in, I moved us up to 37, 2 people would leave. And I was always at this stasis of 35 people. Well, that was usually what was in my high school class or my college class. That was the number of kids, right?
So interesting.
So interesting. And so when I watched my friends and colleagues who have these big communities and are really good at facilitating them and getting people excited and having that kind of like rah energy, I was like, oh my God, I want to do that. And so part of the belief I had was that because I was a teacher and I was good at it as a teacher, I was a really good teacher. I'm supposed to be doing it now. But I don't really want to build up my own community. I would love to serve experts who have a community, but who their people really could use help with copy or content, messaging or systems. So I'm not in competition with anyone. I really want to be like of service to them and their community without having to hold the space for the entire community.
I love that. So protecting your own capacity and staying in that part that gives you the energy. Like that's what you feed on is that creating that. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. And so those are the two things that are on the horizon for 2023. But here's what happens, right? You're like, okay, digital product store and collaborations, not too hard. I have the ideas. I have all the content. I know what I could do. And then life just kind of takes over and you're in the middle of like a personal shitstorm and you're like, oh, well, maybe I'll have to put that off to February. Oh, well, February's next week. Oh, maybe that'll be March. Oh, maybe that'll be April. And suddenly you feel like the year or quarter one is like, it's fleeting. And so a lot of my time right now is just spent, I will do it when I can do it. I don't have to do it right now. Like the vision can be there and I can write it down and it doesn't mean it has to happen right now.
Right. So really protecting that idea that it's your choice to spend the time.
Yeah.
It's not your calendar's choice to tell you when.
Right. Or my, and my assistants, they're like, do not focus on anything else right now. What is the matter with you? Just do this thing. And that's, again, the permission we sometimes can't give ourselves, I guess.
Yeah. And so it sounds like well-being for you right now is really protecting that capacity to be present for your people.
Yes.
Your people at home, the people you're going to serve.
Yes.
That
My
aren't
audience.
the same people that you did before.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where I am.
Awesome. I love that. And I love that you're so clear on it. And especially since it's a shift in identity.
Well, I want to be clear that I wasn't clear for a couple of months. And that was really scary because as a person who's good at productivity, to not be clear about what's next is super scary. So I just, to anybody who's listening and is like, oh, she knows exactly what she wants. I didn't. And I really had to remind myself that to trust myself because I always come out the other side. Always come out the other side. But that stupid murky middle just sucks.
Yes, it does. The dark night of the soul can be dark indeed.
Yes.
I'm glad you're emerging and I'm glad to be part of your community. I know there are going to be people listening to this that would like to connect with you in a way that allows them to know your content. What's the best way for them to do that?
That's a good question. So if you're on Instagram or Facebook, you can find me at Jen Liddy Coach. I'm Liddy. And I'm a 1N Jen. So I always have to say that, Jen Liddy Coach. You'll find me if you search Jen Liddy content, it'll come up. Or go to my website, jenliddy.com. There's lots of goodies there. But I'm pretty much everywhere you would be. So you'll find me on YouTube or Pinterest, like wherever your favorite platform is, you can probably search me and find me there and consume some helpful stuff in a bite-sized manner that makes you just make a few shifts, and learn kind of how to do this in a way that feels more like you.
Yeah. And I can attest to that as well, because I use your stuff all the
Oh,
time.
that's good. That makes me feel so happy.
Yeah. And then the last question that I have is there anyone that you would like to connect with? Any kind of person that you would like to connect with that has a community?
Oh, that's a great question. So there are people out there who are like running communities of specialists, like nurses who have become entrepreneurs or teachers who have become entrepreneurs, and they like are really niche and they're so good at helping them with business in general or strategy in general, but they don't feel like copy and messaging is their jam. Or they would really love somebody to come in and like, if you have people who would love to have like somebody's eyes on their writing to give feedback and change it, in real time, and show you how to do that, like teach you how to do that so that you don't have to rely on somebody else. I think that's really powerful. So I guess that's the kind of person I would love to be in touch with, is somebody who is looking to teach their community and they don't have the capacity to do it themselves.
Awesome. Yeah. Particularly in that area of content that feels authentic.
Yeah. How do we find our voice and lean into our voice? Because we don't want to sound like everybody else out there. We don't want to sound like a robot. And we also don't want to sound like our mentors. And that's really hard for people.
Mm-hmm. And there's that thing that you mentioned earlier that I loved, is that appropriate vulnerability without bleeding all over the place and teaching from a gaping wound.
Right. Bleeding all over the internet, I call it. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You really can be authentic and vulnerable, which I know are buzzwords, but they are what they are. That's what you want to be. And you don't have to take people into your dentist's office or, into your Target dressing room to do it.
Right. So good. Thank you so much for
My
your
pleasure.
time.
Thanks, Bridget. It was so much fun to catch up with you.
Yeah, you too. And I wish you well this year with lots of capacity for the things that you love.